you haven't seen neighborhood bars like this. These bars are literally a house on the corner. Here in Milwaukee, they don't use the term ironically.
This was a social thing. This is people didn't have cars.
People like knowing the bar owner.
I was born upstairs on the living room floor.
There used to be 2,100 liquor licenses in the city of Milwaukee. We're down to 1,000.
And many of these bars are snapshots of the past. Neighborhood institutions that are multiple generations old, and in some cases, like Holler House, over a century old, established in 1908.
My dad used to always point out Holler House when we drove past.
Not many cities have preserved their past as well as Milwaukee. The tavern culture here grew out of its huge German immigrant population and local beer barons, Schlitz, Pabst, Miller, and Blatz.
There's all those old, large brewing complexes, right, which are basically like medieval castles, whether it's Blatz or Schlitz or Pabst.
Of course, the infamous Miller Brewing Company still holds strong here to this day.
When you have to get the beer, don't fool around. Get the best name in the business. Oh, old Milwaukee beer.
I sat down with Mike Lee. He's been a bar owner in Milwaukee for over 25 years. A veteran of the industry here at his own establishment, Club Brady.
All the breweries, the German people that moved here, all that stuff, the beer, the breweries, that really is a big reason there's a lot of neighborhood bars.
I think the Germans just drink all the time. That's just a cultural thing.
In the early 19th century, facing European hardship, many German and Polish immigrants came to the Great Lakes region of the U.S. And a few of them came in search of good land to brew their beer. It turns out the western side of the Great Lakes region is perfect for farming hops and barley.
Into neighborhoods in Milwaukee, you feel like you're basically stepping back into the past.
St. Louis, Chicago, Cincinnati, Cleveland all had their share of German immigrants. But by the early 1900s, Milwaukee was widely seen as the most German of America's major cities. At one point, they had over 70 German language newspapers published in this city alone.
The people, the Germans that moved here certainly like to go out, so that was a big part of it.
But many of these bars originally started as tied houses. That means bars that were literally tied to a brewery. And there are a lot of bars here. Where most states in the US easily have more grocery stores than bars, Wisconsin has 2.7 times more bars than grocery stores. And make no mistake about it, the cold has a role to play here.
Years and years ago, they would build bars and they'd be a Pabst house or a Miller house.
That's a Polish duplex type of a building. In the basement area, they put a second living quarters that was for family that was coming over.
Who wants to hop in a car covered in ice when you can stroll halfway down a block to the house on the corner and stumble home, of course? But a big question looms over all of this. Does this mean Milwaukee is just a bunch of alcoholics?
You've made me think about the opposites. There's a real social aspect to this.
I sat down with Patty and Dan Stovemeister, both born and raised in Wisconsin. Patty has lived here in Milwaukee all her life.
And my grandparents even, they would be all dressed up and there just was a little bar about a block and a half away on the corner. They were always just having a beer over there.
The truth is, every American city has a troubled past or present with alcohol. But Milwaukee neighborhood bars are meeting places. These are not just drinking institutions, they're social institutions.
Really kind of helped to tie together the community. Birthday parties and retirement parties, and they would have softball leagues and things like that run out of the bars.
This is as close to Cheers as you can still get in the US, and very common to what you might find in the less corporatist parts of the world, like small European cities and towns. This city has preserved something older, a community establishment that everyone knows, where guards can be let down, where families can entertain. And what was still is here. The city has somehow held on to the small town feel. You don't see a lot of corporate bars and restaurants inside the city limits. These are not your typical turn and burn commercial establishments with $15 cocktails. In fact, it's quite the opposite here. Most of my tabs were under $10 for 2 beers.
As far as the big chains doing well here, I've never really seen that. World of Beer came down here. They were across the street and they failed.
Every owner knows every owner. Everyone's rooting for everybody. We had a big flood, and so many bars came together to help out for like any bars. It's a team. It's like the Green Bay Packers.
The mom and pop culture feels embraced here in Milwaukee. And in a country that is turning more and more to strip malls and shopping centers, it feels unique. And like I mentioned, these places are old, generations old. Holler House is the oldest sanctioned bowling alley in the U.S.
I think because it had been here for so long, he would point it out and say, oh, that place is still open.
They didn't have automatic pin setters. There was a kid who would stand me.
I mean, they actually had a small boarding house, and then they would put out meals every day.
Wolski is an icon of the neighborhood bar scene, was also established in 1908. Champion's Pub, 4 generations in the family. At the Valley Inn, the owner James was born here on the 2nd floor.
I was born upstairs on the living room floor. I stayed home until I was 21 years old.
But unfortunately, time still has its way of changing things, because as much as Milwaukee has preserved the bars still here, there are less than half of what there used to be 25 years ago.
Nationwide, alcohol sales are down like 10%. There used to be 2,100 liquor licenses in the city of Milwaukee, and now I think we're down to 1,000. So there has been a drop. There's no doubt about it.
AJ Rudnitsky has lived in and around Milwaukee all his life. He drove me around to some of his favorite places, some current and some no longer here.
I mean, there was a line out in the street, and every one of those bars had lines out the street. There are other bars that have been torn down on that street. I mean, again, when you had these flat kind of first floor, I won't call it a storefront, but you had that kind of construction. Those typically could have been. You'd have that kind of living room bar where you'd walk into a room. These are all residences.
The Midwest, including Milwaukee, was once the heart of manufacturing in the U.S. Cities like Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Milwaukee were driven by blue-collar laborers. And what did these factory workers like to do after work? Grab a beer at the neighborhood bar. Not just that, they'd cash their checks here, stop in for lunch.
That was one of those places where if you get called in sick to work, you had to call in sick to Valence too, because otherwise they'd have your stuff waiting for you and they'd charge you for it.
Then in the 1970s, as many of us know, the exodus of manufacturing hit the U.S. Many factories left this region to go overseas, leading now to the nickname, the Rust Belt. And it's not just the economic factors at play here. Young adults across the country are drinking less.
They lost a lot of neighborhood bars in the city. You can't smoke in bars anymore, and that had an impact as well. Some older people just say that if I can't smoke at the bar, I'm not going down there. There's no doubt that social media has had an impact for a number of years on the fact that to meet somebody, you don't have to go to a bar, you can use a dating app, that kind of thing.
Gen Z is buying less alcohol than any generation before it. Whether a mix of economic or cultural reasons, the kids might not appreciate neighborhood bars the same way their parents and grandparents did. Evolution is inevitable, though. Many of these places might still go away. What will happen as the inevitable tidal wave of technology and social media continues its takeover? Milwaukee is a city that often exists, to many, in the shadow of its giant neighbor to the south, Chicago. But this is not a city to be second-guessed. In fact, it punches high above its weight class. They have major pro sports here, the Brewers, the Bucks, and by proxy, the Packers. Politically, this city has a big say in national elections as the largest city in the swing state of Wisconsin. So much so that they've hosted both the Democratic National Convention and the most recent Republican National Convention in the last 4 years. They have their own bona fide American accent here, generally different from the accent of Chicago or Minnesota or anything from the East Coast. How much do we want to hold on to of the mom and pops of the world? Can we weather the cold storm of the future as well as Milwaukee has? For a nation and world so focused on the cosmopolitan, the tech-focused future, Milwaukee reminds us, like Europe, that real charm comes from our past, preserving our history, lifting the baton of those that came before us, A cold beer after a long day at work, and a familiar community to share that beer with. Just my kind of thing.